Turning 60. It's a milestone. One that often marks a shift, a moment when life, as we once knew it, starts to feel different. But here's the thing, when most people think of turning 60, they think it's the beginning of the end. They start to believe that their best years are behind them, that it's too late to make changes, too late to try new things. But what if I told you, the truth is, it's just the opposite. At 60, you're standing at the gateway of a new chapter, one filled with untapped potential, wisdom, and untold possibilities. It's not the end of the road, it's a new beginning, a chance to reflect, to plan, and to shape the life that lies ahead of you. And while it may seem like time is running out, it's actually the perfect time to set the foundation for a future that's filled with meaning, health, and happiness. But here's the catch, there are a few things that, if you don't have them in place, will leave you looking back with regret. Regret that you didn't take action earlier. Regret that you didn't make the choices that could have helped you live the fullest, most vibrant life possible. So, what are those 5 things? What are the elements that can make or break your experience after 60? In this journey, we'll uncover them. Together, we'll explore the keys to living a life free from regrets, a life that embraces both the wisdom of age and the promise of a bright future. Are you ready to take the first step? To ensure that when you look back, it's not with regret, but with a sense of pride and fulfillment. This isn't just about getting older, it's about making the most of the time you have left. Let's dive in. The journey begins now, at 60. Physical health, it's the foundation of everything. As we age, we often take our bodies for granted, thinking that the aches and pains we feel are just part of growing older. But here's the truth, your body is your greatest asset. Without it, nothing else matters. Once you turn 60, your physical health becomes even more critical. It's not about chasing youth or pushing yourself beyond your limits. It's about smart, consistent choices that lay the groundwork for a longer, healthier, and more vibrant life. And yet, so many people let their health slip away, thinking it's too late to start. They accept their fate, surrendering to the notion that chronic pain, illness, and fatigue are inevitable. But they don't have to be. If you neglect your physical health after 60, you're not just robbing yourself of vitality, you're setting yourself up for regret. Regret that you didn't prioritize movement, that you didn't nourish your body the way it needed, or that you didn't invest in your long-term well-being. Here's the reality, you don't need to run marathons, or bench press hundreds of pounds. The secret lies in small, consistent actions. Regular exercise, balanced nutrition, and taking care of your body through routine checkups can make a world of difference. Let me ask you, how would it feel to wake up each day feeling energized, strong, and capable? To enjoy the activities you love without the burden of aches and fatigue? When you prioritize your physical health, you're not just adding years to your life. You're adding life to your years. Now, this doesn't mean you can skip over the essentials. Things like stretching to keep those joints limber, walking to keep your heart strong, and eating the foods that fuel your body are critical. But it's not all about the physical exertion, it's about listening to your body. Understanding what it needs and respecting its limits, and trust me, when you start investing in your health, the results will be more than just physical. You'll find yourself with more energy, greater clarity, and the ability to enjoy life in ways you never thought possible. So let's take a closer look at how you can maintain a healthy body. Even after 60, start small. Begin with a daily walk, some gentle stretching, or a balanced meal plan. It's not about doing it all at once. It's about consistency. It's about taking action today, so that tomorrow, you won't look back and wish you had done more. You deserve to live a life without regret, without the physical limitations that can hold you back. This is your time to invest in your health. Don't wait until it's too late. Let's take control of our health, and embrace the strength and vitality that lies ahead. As we age, it's not just our bodies that need attention, our minds do, too. In fact, mental and emotional well-being are the true keys to living a fulfilling life after 60. We often focus on physical health, but the mind is just as powerful, if not more. It can shape our perception of the world, influence our relationships, and even impact our physical health. After 60, many people find themselves facing challenges they never expected: loneliness, grief, or perhaps even the creeping feeling of irrelevance. It's easy to fall into the trap of negative thinking, believing that life is winding down, or that our best days are behind us. But here's something important you need to know: the quality of your life after 60 is largely shaped by how you care for your mind and emotions. Emotional well-being isn't just about staying happy all the time, it's about resilience. It's about being able to bounce back from hardships, manage stress, and stay connected to your purpose, even when things feel uncertain. When you neglect your mental health, you risk losing touch with what makes life meaningful. You might start feeling isolated, anxious, or even depressed. These are the silent traps that sneak up on you, leaving you feeling like life is slipping away. But here's the good news: just as you can work on your physical health, you can also train and strengthen your emotional resilience. The first step is to recognize that it's okay to feel sad or overwhelmed. It's normal to face challenges. But it's what you do next that matters. Stay connected. Cultivate relationships with family, friends, and the community. These connections not only provide support, they enrich your life in ways that no material possession ever could. Having someone to talk to, share experiences with, and laugh together is one of the most powerful ways to maintain emotional balance, and don't underestimate the power of having a purpose. Whether it's volunteering, pursuing a hobby, or simply engaging in something that brings you joy, having a reason to get out of bed in the morning is crucial. You may have retired from a career, but that doesn't mean your role in the world is over. Quite the opposite. This is your time to explore new passions, to reinvent yourself, and to find joy in new ways. When you focus on nurturing your mind and emotions, you're not just preventing mental decline, you're enriching your life. You're cultivating the strength to face challenges with grace, the courage to embrace change, and the peace that comes with knowing you're living authentically. So, what can you do today to care for your mental and emotional well-being? Start by seeking out connections, whether it's through social activities, joining a group, or even talking to someone you trust. Practice gratitude daily, focusing on the positive aspects of your life. And don't forget to take time for yourself, to reflect and recharge. Remember, your mind is just as vital to your health as your body. By keeping it strong, you create a life filled with peace, joy, and resilience. This is your chance to flourish, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. Let's make sure that when we look back on these years, we don't just see the toll of time, we see the depth, the wisdom, and the fulfillment of a well-lived life. When we think about life after 60, the first thing that often comes to mind is freedom, freedom to do what you want, when you want. But here's the truth: freedom doesn't come without a solid foundation. And one of the most important foundations to build in your 60s is financial security. Without it, the freedom you crave could slip away. Now, when I say financial security, I'm not talking about being a millionaire or living lavishly. I'm talking about the peace of mind that comes from knowing your basic needs are covered, that you have the resources to take care of yourself, and that you're not burdened by the stress of financial uncertainty. So many people at 60 or beyond realize too late that they didn't plan ahead. They didn't save enough, invest wisely, or think about how they would manage their finances in retirement. And that's a regret that can be hard to shake. Financial insecurity can rob you of peace, health, and the ability to enjoy your later years with ease. The good news? It's never too late to start. In fact, your 60s are the perfect time to take stock of your finances and make sure you're on the right track. Whether you're still working, drawing from retirement savings, or living off Social Security, there are ways to manage and improve your financial situation. It's about being proactive, setting a budget, and investing in ways that will provide you with the income you need. One of the most important steps is to assess where you stand. Are you spending more than you earn? Are you paying off debt that could be holding you back? If so, it's time to make a plan to get your finances in order. But beyond just budgeting and paying down debt, there are strategic investments to consider. Have you taken full advantage of retirement accounts like IRAs or 401(k)s? Have you thought about how you'll continue to generate income in retirement, whether through passive income sources or part-time work? And don't forget about the importance of estate planning. Having a will, understanding how your assets will be managed, and planning for potential healthcare costs can make a huge difference in how you experience your later years. When you have financial stability, you have the freedom to enjoy life without constant worry. You can travel, visit family, pursue hobbies, and give back to others in ways that truly enrich your life. More importantly, you'll be able to face life's unexpected challenges with confidence, knowing that you've prepared for the future. So, take action today. Even small changes can make a significant impact. Start by reviewing your savings, assessing your expenses, and creating a realistic plan for the years ahead. The peace of mind that comes with financial security will give you the freedom to live your life to the fullest. Remember, it's not about having endless wealth, it's about creating a stable foundation that allows you to enjoy every moment without worry. Let's take control of our financial future today, so that tomorrow, we don't look back and wish we had done more. As we age, one of the most important treasures we can possess isn't wealth, health, or even independence. It's connection. Meaningful relationships, whether with family, friends, or even a supportive community, hold the power to make life rich and fulfilling. But far too many people in their 60s and beyond let social isolation creep in. They assume that friends will come naturally, that their family will always be there. But the truth is, maintaining strong social connections requires effort, especially as we age. Loneliness is one of the most underrated yet damaging aspects of aging. It's a slow burn. You may not notice it at first, but over time, it can affect your mental health, emotional well-being, and even your physical health. Studies have shown that social isolation can lead to depression, cognitive decline, and even a weakened immune system. So, while you may think that physical health is the most important aspect of aging well, nurturing your relationships is just as crucial, but it's not enough to simply have people around. It's about having people who matter. People who listen, who support you, and who bring joy into your life. After all, we all crave connection, it's built into our very nature. The key is being intentional about the relationships you cultivate, focusing on quality rather than quantity. So, how do you ensure your social connections remain strong after 60? First, stay open to meeting new people. It's easy to slip into the mindset that you've had enough of making new friends, that your circle is complete. But the reality is, new friendships can bring fresh perspectives and joy into your life. Volunteer, join local clubs, take up hobbies that interest you. These are great ways to meet people who share your passions. Next, invest in the relationships that matter most. Spend time with your children, grandchildren, and loved ones, but also make time for friends. It's not just about being in the same room, it's about truly connecting. Share stories, experiences, and ideas. Laugh together. Support one another. These moments build deeper bonds that can weather any storm, and don't forget about the power of community. Whether it's a religious group, a hobby club, or a local social group, being part of a community helps you feel connected to something larger than yourself. It reminds you that you're not alone in this journey, but even when life gets busy, and the challenges of aging start to feel overwhelming. Remember this, your relationships are a constant source of strength. They'll keep you grounded, give you something to look forward to, and offer the emotional support you need to navigate life's ups and downs. So, don't wait. Start fostering those deep connections today. Reach out to someone you haven't spoken to in a while. Plan a gathering, pick up the phone, or write a letter. Reconnect with those who matter most, and embrace the joy of meaningful relationships. In the end, it's not the years in your life that count, it's the people who make those years worth living. There is a silent truth about growing older that no one warns us about. It's not the wrinkles on our skin or the stiffness in our joints that hurts the most, it's waking up and asking ourselves, why am I still here? After 60, retirement sets in. The children have grown. The career is behind us. The world no longer demands from us as it once did. And slowly, invisibly, many begin to drift, but here's the real secret to aging well, maybe even to living at all: purpose, a deep, burning sense of why you wake up in the morning. Without it, even the healthiest body feels empty. But with it, even the tired, aging soul feels young again. A sense of purpose isn't reserved for the young or the famous. It's not about changing the world on a grand stage. It's about meaning. And meaning can be found in the simplest of things: helping your neighbor carry their groceries, teaching your grandchild how to bake bread the way your mother did, volunteering at a shelter, writing your memoirs, growing a garden, painting with no goal except to create something beautiful. These things may seem small to the world, but to your spirit, they are fuel. Many elders fall into despair because they feel useless. But let me say this as a doctor, and more importantly, as a man who has watched thousands grow old: you are never useless. You are needed. Your wisdom, your presence, your story, it matters. If you are breathing, you have purpose, but here's where the challenge comes: you must choose it. You must create it. It won't knock on your door or beg for your attention. You have to go find it. Or more truthfully, remember it. Because often, our sense of purpose is something we left behind long ago in the chaos of survival. So ask yourself now, today, not tomorrow, what stirs your heart? What did you love doing before the world told you to be practical? What value can you offer, even just to one person, your 60s, 70s, 80s? They are not the end of the book. They are the deepest chapters, where your words can finally hold the weight of everything you've lived. Don't let them be silent. You are not just aging, you are ripening. Purpose does not disappear with time. In fact, time makes it more valuable. And the beautiful part is this: when you live with purpose, your health improves. Your energy rises. Your eyes regain their light. Science proves it, but your soul already knows it. So today, decide, not to exist, but to live, not to wait, but to give, not to fade, but to burn brightly, until your final breath, because nothing keeps you alive longer than knowing why you are alive. We've come a long way, haven't we, from discovering the hidden strength of health, to recognizing the quiet power of purpose and connection, to understanding that after 60, life doesn't shrink, it deepens. But now, as we close this journey, I want to share with you the most difficult, and perhaps the most beautiful, lesson of all: the wisdom of letting go. Letting go is not giving up, it's not weakness, nor is it loss. It's evolution. At this stage in life, many of us carry invisible weights, regrets from the past, grudges that hardened over decades, the ache of what could have been. We carry guilt as parents, pain from broken friendships, grief for those who've gone before us. And fear, yes, fear, of what's ahead. But my dear friend, let me tell you this with every ounce of truth in me: the freedom you seek after 60 doesn't come from holding on, it comes from knowing what to release. Let go of needing to be right all the time. Let go of comparing yourself to younger versions of you, or others. Let go of proving your worth. You've already proven it, many times over. Let go of the pain that no longer serves you. Let go of trying to control what you cannot. In its place, embrace peace. Embrace forgiveness. Embrace lightness, because the final gift of aging isn't found in what you gather, it's in what you leave behind, and that, my friend, is your legacy. Your legacy isn't just in your estate or the heirlooms in your home, it's in the stories you share, the wisdom you pass down, the moments you were fully present for someone who needed you. It's in how you live, right now. Today, so as we wrap up this journey together, I ask you, what do you want to be remembered for? Not by the world, but by the people who sat across your dinner table, by the child who held your hand, by the friend who found comfort in your presence. You still have time to shape that legacy. It begins not with grand gestures, but with intentional living, one smile, one act of grace, one brave act of letting go. If this message touched something in you, if it stirred a memory, gave you clarity, or simply reminded you that life after 60 is still rich with meaning, then I ask you to do one thing: like this video, share it with someone you love, and leave a comment below. What is the one thing you are choosing to let go of today? Let's create a space of truth, of wisdom, of healing, together, because you are not alone. You are not forgotten, you are not past your prime, you are just now stepping into the most sacred part of your story, and I, for one, can't wait to see what you do with it.